the wife couldn't figure out, even in her dreams, why her husband, who had been in a vegetative state for 3 years, woke up and the first thing he wanted to do was divorce her. All these years, she had been by my bedside every day, taking care of me. She even spent an amount no less than the value of 5 Maseratis to hire a nurse, who came daily to give me deep massages to prevent my body from becoming stiff. But only I know how Willow really cared for me. Chapter 1. Mr. Wang has been in a coma for 3 years now, and there has been no sign of recovery. Even the Wang family is advising Miss Lu to give up, but Willow remains as devoted as ever. Miss Lu must truly love Mr. Wang deeply, and they've known each other since childhood. Mr. Wang is so fortunate, receiving such obvious love from Miss Lu since they were young. I heard that Miss Lu has been planning a wedding, wanting to marry Mr. Wang and make their relationship official. Mr. Wang will surely be so touched when he wakes up, right? The nurses' voices gradually faded as they continued chatting outside the ward. However, on the hospital bed, my tears soaked the pillowcase. I said, "System, I'm not waking up. Let me return to the mission world." The system replied, "Host, are you out of your mind? You've worked so hard, faced countless dangers, and now you're about to wake up and reunite with Willow." Before it could finish, the system's usual mechanical tone was overtaken by an even greater shock. It stared in disbelief at the naked man and woman on the sofa in the hospital room. It exclaimed, "Host, isn't that your fiancée?" I said, "Yes." I recognized her voice and scent. 6 years ago, the night before our wedding, Willow had suffered a car accident and fell into a coma. I took care of her for 3 whole years. Her injuries were too severe, and she grew weaker by the day. I begged the heavens for her to be spared. In the final moments of her life, the system appeared. It told me that if I earned enough points, I could save her. But I couldn't wait to save Willow. I didn't hesitate to accrue points on credit. When Willow woke up, I became the one in a coma. For these 3 years, in order to repay the massive debt and reunite with her in the present, I threw myself into one SSS Plus mission after another. Disregarding my life, I endured unimaginable torment, holding on only because of my love for her. But on the day I was finally returning with joy, the fiancée I had been thinking of day and night was entwined in another man's arms at my bedside. Willow, who had been lost in physical pleasure, seemed to sense something. Shuddering, her eyes, once blurry with lust, regained their cold indifference. Without a trace of hesitation, she pushed the men off her and stood up to gather her scattered clothes. Makoto sat on the sofa, fully exposed, his eyes filled with sorrow. He said, "Willow, do we have to keep this a secret forever?" Willow put on her clothes slowly, smoothing out the wrinkles in her dress as if she hadn't just been coiling around Makoto like a serpent on the sofa. Willow said, "As long as you're with me, you'll always be my secret lover. If you're not happy, you can end it anytime. My husband's place belongs to George." Makoto's eyes were filled with unshed tears as he pitifully said, "I don't dare ask to be your husband, but as long as I can occupy a small corner of your heart, I'll be content." Willow glanced at his well-built muscles, her expression dark. Then, her cold tone softened with a hint of pity. She said, "We've been together for 3 years. As long as you're good to me, I won't treat you poorly. Once I've given George the heir to the family, I can have a child with you." The system said, "Host, she started keeping a lover right after you left, and it's your brother she's cheating with." I replied, "Willow isn't my fiancée, and Makoto isn't my brother." In the sea of my consciousness, I felt a despair so deep I could hardly bear it. I said, "System, take me away. I don't want to see them anymore." The system, which usually would have been eager for me to spend my life earning points for the main god, now couldn't bear it. It said, "Host, you don't have to leave the world entirely. You can move far away from them and start a new life somewhere no one knows you." I said, "Willow once loved me with her life, but in the end, she fell for Makoto. Soon, she will begin to despise me, just like my parents and sister did. No one in this world will ever welcome me. Let me go." With a heart full of despair, the heart monitor let out a loud, piercing alarm. With a beep, Willow shouted, "George." Willow crawled to my bedside, and when she saw my lifeless face, her heart sank. She frantically pressed the call button and screamed at the door, "Help, someone, please." I said, "Willow and the Wang family will never let me go. Only death can free me from them." My consciousness was slipping into oblivion. The system urgently said, "Host, you can withdraw your wish to save Willow. The points you've earned are enough to change your body." I regained a brief moment of clarity. It said, "Host, if you change your identity, Willow and the Wang family will no longer have anything to do with you. You will have a family that truly loves you. Don't be afraid, host." Chapter 2. The light in the resuscitation room did not go out for a long time. Willow clutched several critical illness notices, slumped on the cold corridor floor all night, her entire being lost. as if suddenly thrown into an abyss. The surrounding silence was eerie, broken only by the chaotic footsteps of the medical staff and the sound of her own racing heartbeat. Her nerves were stretched to the limit when she heard that not only had I survived, but miraculously woke up. Willow finally burst into tears of joy. She cried all the way as she followed the stretcher back to the ward, holding onto the precious treasure she had almost lost, her head buried deep in my shoulder. Tears mixed with warm breaths fell on my skin. She said, "George, I almost thought I was going to lose you. Do you know, you've been asleep for 3 years. I searched for doctors all over the world, but no one could figure out why you were in a coma. They said it might be because you were too tired. George, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Please don't leave me again. George." Willow held me for a while, then let go to check on me again, and tightly embraced me once more, over and over again. Afraid that I might vanish, she constantly expressed her love for me. She said, "In these 3 years, I've been worried every moment that I might lose you. Without you, I would die." In those 3,000 small worlds, I repeatedly imagined our reunion. Each time, she would hold me tightly, just like now. I was filled with joy, believing I was about to find happiness. I never imagined I would face such a bloody betrayal. This embrace, which once made me feel infinite affection, now felt like a cold, slippery snake, tightening around me, repulsive and suffocating. She even smelled of Makoto's cigarette smoke, a scent that brought back the filthy words exchanged between the two of them last night. Dirty, too dirty. I couldn't help but push her away, turning to the side to vomit. Willow was frightened, rushing to fetch tea and water, carefully wiping the corner of my mouth, occasionally glancing at me with hesitation, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. Finally, she couldn't resist and asked tentatively, "Did you hear anything last night?" I raised my head and caught the hint of guilt and panic in her eyes. Does she feel fear too? Then why did she choose to seek excitement right by my bedside? Was she sure I wouldn't wake up, or did she believe I would never leave? The system spoke. "Host, I found it. Chan Group's young master's soul is incomplete, and in half a month, he will reincarnate. I've arranged it with the heavenly Tao, and once David dies, you can borrow his body. Chan Group is much stronger than the Wang family. Half a month. In just half a month, I will change identities." I stared directly at the woman in front of me, who had already recovered her health. Gone was the emaciated, lifeless figure from 3 years ago. I asked, "System, what will happen to her if I retract my wish?" The system replied, "She'll return to being a vegetable." I paused for a moment. The system curiously asked, "Host, are you regretting it?" I replied, "I'm just sighing." I bound myself to the system and traveled to another world to cure her and live by her side. Now, I'm taking back the points I owe her, and she will once again become a vegetable, just like 3 years ago, quietly waiting for death. How did we, two people who once loved each other so deeply, end up like this? Tears welled up in my eyes, and I quickly lowered my head, suppressing the urge to cry. The system comforted me. "Host, this was Willow's fate. By the way, the first world's villain chased after you from one world to the next. Honestly, I think she's much more devoted than Willow. At the time, I advised you to consider her, but you were indifferent. Such a pity." After waiting for a long time without receiving a response from me, Willow's heart sank. She couldn't help but regret her actions from last night, especially the day before I woke up. She thought, "It couldn't be, could it? It couldn't be that I heard something." She thought, "George, no matter what, I only recognize you as my husband. Right now." Willow just wanted to hurry up and have the wedding to dispel this inexplicable anxiety. She no longer cared about the formalities of marriage, and with an extremely serious and determined expression, she said, "I'll go back to the Liu family to prepare. When you're discharged, I'll come over to discuss the wedding. Our wedding has been delayed for 6 whole years. I can't wait anymore." George, without waiting for me to respond, she stood up and hurriedly left the ward. Not long after the door closed, my parents hurriedly arrived. Seeing that I was awake, my father breathed a sigh of relief. He said, "You're awake. Good, good." My heart stirred slightly as I remembered the love my father had shown me before I was 5. I was the first child, born into a family full of love and expectations. But then I heard my father muttering, "Makoto is 28 years old now. Dragging it on isn't a solution. Makoto, Makoto. So it's him again." I forced a bitter smile. What else did they want me to do for Makoto? My parents and sister had given way to him, and I had been a blood bank for 20 years. Wasn't that enough? I was dying. I didn't want to ask if they still remembered who their real son was. Every time I protested, I was met with "ungrateful, spoiled brat." It was because of the car accident when I was 5, where the driver died saving me. They all said the driver died because he saved me, that Makoto was pitiful, that I owed him a life. But what crime had I committed? If I could, I would rather have died 23 years ago. When my mother saw me looking down and silent, She scolded me in dissatisfaction. Don't you know how to greet your parents? We came running here as soon as we heard you woke up, and you don't even know how to be grateful. After lying in bed for years, you still haven't changed that rebellious nature. I no longer expected any so-called motherly love, but my heart still ached. I suppressed the surging emotions and asked, "Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Without considering whether I, just having woken up, could bear it, my mother got straight to the point. "George, I'm not afraid to tell you, Makoto and Willow are together now. You've been lying in bed for years, nearly dead, and Willow didn't dare go public with it. Now that you're awake, let them be together." These words struck me like a hammer, shattering my heart into pieces. So they all knew about Makoto and Willow. My voice was hoarse and sharp, as if blood was spilling from my words. I've been betrayed, I've been hurt, and yet now it's my fault for delaying them. My mother said, "You were in a coma for 3 years. Shouldn't they be allowed to move on after all that time?" She looked at me with a disapproving gaze, her eyes full of disappointment. She said, "Makoto isn't like you. He's not a Wong family child. He's not good enough for Willow, but after losing her, what should he do? He's already wasted so much of his youth on her. George, you can't be so selfish." In the end, my mother dropped a final bombshell. "This is something you owe to Makoto." Chapter 3. I lifted my gaze to look at my so-called parents. I asked, "If I die, will I no longer owe him anything?" My mother replied, "Good, so, you're threatening to die to force us, huh?" My father, enraged, started to berate me. "It's been 3 years. Do you think Willow still likes you? Marrying you was out of goodwill. How long are you going to try to extort favors from others? Not a single thing you've done in your life has been worry-free. Why can't you learn a little from Makoto and be as filial and sensible as he is? Unfilial son." I was overwhelmed with sorrow and asked, "What do you want me to do to help them?" Finally, my mother smiled and said, "Your father and I have already found the perfect match for you, the young lady from the Lee family in City F. She's willing to marry you. After a few days, you can tell Willow that you're the one who changed your mind, and that will make it easier for her to let go and see Makoto's good qualities. The Lee family is no worse than the Liu family. Once you marry Miss Lee, you'll understand your parents' good intentions. Your parents would never harm you." The system spoke. "Host, don't listen to them." The system quickly checked the information and added, "The Lee family indeed has tremendous power, but Miss Lee is mentally unstable. She has killed or crippled 2 of her previous fiancés. The Wong family is envious of the Lee family's projects worth billions in the city center and has been trying to arrange a business marriage. The Wong family has always been worried that others will think they raised Makoto for the purpose of marriage, to repay a debt. Now that you've woken up, they want you to marry Miss Lee. They saw Mr. Lee before coming here and finalized the marriage proposal. I had taken care of Willow for 3 years and then slept for another 3. So I naturally had no idea about the secrets of the Lee family. With the power of the Wong family, I didn't believe my parents didn't know about it. If it weren't for the system, I might have cancelled my engagement due to Willow's change of heart and then reluctantly obeyed my parents' orders to marry Miss Lee. This was my wonderful father and mother. My father, his face stern, said, "What are you hesitating about? In City F, besides the Su and Shin families, who can compare to the Lee family? Miss Lee is also the maternal aunt of the Su family head. Although their relationship has cooled due to her tragic death and the Su family head's coma, the Su family head woke up yesterday. Do you think the Su family head won't help his uncle?" My mother, gleeful, said, "Ah, you've tied yourself to the Lee and Su families. You always say I'm biased, but look, I'm giving you the best. You ungrateful brat." I looked into my mother's eager eyes, and I saw no hesitation or concern there. Was she really in such a hurry to push me into the fire? In reality, Miss Lee was crazy, and Willow wasn't any different. Only I knew the twisted and terrifying demon hidden deep inside Willow's heart. Unless I died, there was no escape from these 2 absurd engagements. I said, "System, I promise you, I'll take back my wish for Willow's recovery. In half a month, I'll borrow another body to reincarnate. The Chan family is far stronger than the Wong family, and I'll no longer let these people control me." The system responded. "Understood, host." I agreed to my parents' proposal. I didn't want to face their endless scolding during the last 15 days. After this body dies, the engagement with Willow would naturally be cancelled. On the day I was discharged, I met my long-lost sister, Maria. Seeing her brother, who had just recovered from a long illness, there seemed to be nothing but wariness in her eyes. The joy I had felt earlier vanished. Was she afraid that I would make Makoto think too much? On the way home, Maria, with a tense expression, coldly lectured me. "George, Makoto lost his father at a young age and has been living under someone else's roof. Don't be fooled by how strong he seems on the outside. Inside, he's actually very fragile. He should have had a happy family. The driver uncle's spirit must not want to see his son suffer. I muttered to myself, suffer. Makoto, who had always been physically weak, received all the attention and love from the Wang family. My original bedroom, study, and art room were all taken by Makoto. From elementary school to university, teachers and classmates only saw me as a bookkeeper and companion reader who was forced to care for Makoto. I could have gone to Tsinghua or Peking University. At the very least, I could have attended City C, closer to Makoto's school, but to be a blood donor, I could only attend a second-tier university. Was that suffering? I still remember the first time I was forced to give Makoto a blood transfusion. It hurt so much that I cried, and Maria, following me, cried as well and gave me the candy she had secretly hidden. She said, "Brother, don't cry. Maria is here." That candy should have been sweet, but now, when I think of it, it feels so bitter. I forced myself not to let the tears fall, but still, they betrayed me and rolled down my cheeks one by one. I could only lean back in my seat, turning my head to look out the car window. "My dear sister," Maria's cold voice came from beside me. She said, "Don't bully Makoto." Chapter 4. When we arrived at the Wang family home, Makoto had just come out of the kitchen, wearing a soft and harmless smile. He said, "George, to celebrate your discharge from the hospital, I made some dishes. George, please try them." I looked at the dining table, which was piled with seafood, fish, shrimp, crab, scallops, all kinds of seafood. My parents looked on with pride and approval, not seeing any problem with the dishes. Makoto asked, "Aren't you going to eat, George?" He sighed and said, "It seems George still can't accept me. Is there something wrong with me, George?" My father suddenly slammed his chopsticks onto the table and angrily scolded, "No matter how much you resent Makoto, he's a son of the Wang family. He's your brother. You'll eat, and that's that." My mother shook her head in disappointment and said, "George, you're too willful." Maria frowned even more tightly and said, "Makoto has been busy all day. Can't you at least take one bite to show some courtesy? Is that so hard?" "Yeah, is it really so hard? When I was 3, I was hospitalized and nearly died from a seafood allergy. They had forgotten all about it." I said, "I'm not eating, George." My father jumped up in fury. Before his angry words could spill out, I calmly said, "I'm allergic to seafood. I can't eat this." My father froze, as if he finally remembered the terrifying scene from years ago. Makoto said, "I'm sorry, George, I didn't know." He was so upset that tears streamed down his face, as though he had been greatly wronged. He sobbed, "George, don't be mad at me." The guilt on my father's face evaporated, and he coldly scolded, "Makoto didn't do it on purpose. Why bring it up and embarrass him?" A wave of helplessness washed over me. My body, weakened by muscle atrophy, wavered slightly. I said, "Forget it. I'm tired." I struggled to walk toward my room. I opened the door to find the guest room empty, with its decor changed into a piano room. My mother said, "George, you've been lying in the hospital for years, and this room has been empty all this time. Since Makoto wants to learn the piano, we let him use it." My mother followed me in, looking slightly embarrassed. She asked, "You don't mind, do you?" I quietly asked, "Now that I'm awake, shouldn't this room be returned to me?" My mother, enraged, snapped, "There are other rooms in the house. Look at Makoto, he never fought with you for anything." I sighed, "He doesn't need to fight. He has everything without doing anything." My mother's expression stiffened, unable to hide her discomfort. Maria, who had followed, said in a low voice, "George, what are you making a fuss about now? Are you trying to make things difficult for us, or are you intentionally targeting Makoto?" I stared at Maria for a long time. For a moment, I couldn't even recognize the little sister who used to follow me around like a shadow. After 3 years of deep slumber, the place I once held in her heart had already been taken by Makoto. How could I ever repay Makoto for what I owe him? Seeing the sadness in my eyes, Maria softened her tone. She said, "Brother, you're being too biased against Makoto. He means you no harm. I hope you two can get along well. Also, since you woke up so suddenly, we'll prepare another room for you. Stop causing trouble." I nodded silently, not rebutting. What was the point of arguing? They had never thought of letting me win. In the end, I moved into the small room at the end of the attic corridor, where my old personal belongings were carelessly stacked in a corner. The crystal ball had been broken for who knows how long. The liquid inside long dried up. The small castle model had rolled off and was crushed. It was a gift from my sister. I still remembered when she was only 3. She told me that one day we would build a big castle and live together. I picked up the broken crystal ball, turned on the switch, but no music played. I should have realized this earlier. 23 years ago, this home was no longer mine. In the corner were many things I had cherished, symbols of the family bonds and love I had once clung to. They had all moved on, while I remained stuck in the past. It was time to let go. I found a burlap sack and started putting those items inside. Dragging them to the yard, I brought over an iron barrel, put in some of the more flammable items, and set it on fire. The smell of burning reached my father, who rushed out, jumping up and down in fury. He yelled, "It's just a change of room, and you're setting a fire. You're deliberately humiliating the Wong family." My mother couldn't believe it. "George, how did you turn into this?" I ignored them, mechanically continuing to throw things into the barrel. Maria came up and grabbed my hand, saying, "George, do you really want to make a scene like this?" Just then, Willow arrived with a car full of gifts to discuss the marriage proposal. As soon as Willow got out of the car, she saw the iron barrel burning fiercely. Her gaze finally landed on the plush toy I was holding, and she said, stunned, "George, this is the gift I gave you. You used to sleep with it. You're going to burn it." I stared blankly at the dirty rabbit plush. I wasn't sure if I was talking about the toy or her. I said, "It's dirty." Chapter 5. The plush toy had been discarded for too long. Its once snow-white body now stained with large patches of dirt. Even its rabbit ears had bite marks from rats. Willow took the stuffed rabbit, furrowing her brow. What happened to this? I had carelessly thrown all the things I had once carefully kept, school uniforms, group photos, love letters, into the iron barrel. The ferocious flames devoured everything from the past. I asked the same question Willow had just asked. I said, "Yeah, how did it end up like this?" Willow didn't see the photos or letters, but she did catch a glimpse of the corner of the uniform and assumed I was really burning those old things. She casually threw the stuffed rabbit into the fire as well. She said, "If you're burning it, then just burn it. I'll buy you a new one." Before the toy could burn completely, Willow eagerly dragged me to look at the list of dowry items: luxurious houses, cars, jewelry, antiques, and calligraphy. She had added a fortune's worth of dowry over the past 3 years. Willow handed the list to me, her voice light and bright. "George, all these dowries are yours to keep. When we get married, everything of the Liu family will be yours. If it weren't for needing to pick an auspicious date, I'd want to marry you today." Willow's eyes sparkled with excitement. For a moment, I saw the girl from when she was 18, her cheeks flushed, stammering as she confessed her love to me. If I hadn't overheard her and Makoto's intimate conversation, I might have believed that she truly loved me. "Willow, how did you end up cheating? We were so close to happiness." Willow's chest rose and fell dramatically, her eyes glowing with determination. "George, let's set our wedding date for the 28th of this month." "All right." I nodded. "All right, the 28th would be the day of our wedding and my death." "Willow, get ready to taste the bitterness of hope turning into despair." The Wong family had attended as silent witnesses. Liu's sudden visit with a marriage proposal had caught them off guard, and they couldn't publicly stop it. After they left, my mother's face hardened. She said, "How could you agree to this wedding? If the Li family finds out, how will you marry Miss Li? And Makoto, have you thought about him? I know you used to like Willow, but you have to accept the reality. She and Makoto are meant to be together. So, you want Makoto to marry Willow?" Huh. Now I was a bit curious. If I die while Willow still loves me, will Makoto get what he wants? How will the Wong family explain themselves to the Li family? I said, "Don't worry, the engagement will be called off." I smirked, thinking, this is fine. Death will be a new beginning for me. Soon I'll be free from them all, no longer hoping for some kind of love that was never meant for me. My mother said, "The Li family is a good match, and so many young men are dying to marry into it. How can you ungrateful brat, be so unwilling? Your parents are just trying to do what's best for you." She snatched the dowry list from my hand and turned to stuff it into Makoto's arms. She said, "Makoto, these are your fiancé's dowry. Take care of it." Makoto said, "But this is Willow's gift to George." Looking at the glittering array of meeting gifts on the table, his jealousy was already boiling over. When he glanced at the dowry list, which was filled with assets, his eyes reddened. He had been with Willow for 3 years. How could he be overshadowed by George? And the Li family, they were a top-tier family. Why should George, the sickly one, get a better engagement than him? Makoto forcibly suppressed the bubbling hatred and, with fear in his eyes, he pushed the list away, saying, "Mom, Makoto doesn't dare compete with George. Please, let George have it. Makoto has wronged George. Please don't hate me, George." My mother sighed and said, "You silly boy, it's you who has suffered." Her gaze softened as she patted the head of her adopted son, a deep sense of emotion stirring in her heart. She said, "If only George could be half as understanding as you." Chapter 6. That night, I went downstairs to get some water, and as I passed by the second-floor landing, I saw Makoto standing on the small balcony in the distance. I pretended not to see him. Makoto, however, walked up to me, a mocking smirk on his handsome face. He said, "George, what's wrong? Can't sleep because the dowry list ended up in my hands. Your father, mother, sister, And Willow, they should be the ones who love you most. But look who still cares about you now. George, you're such a failure. I looked at his bloodshot eyes and replied. Isn't it you who can't sleep? Is it because Willow wants to marry someone else and not you? George. Makoto's face contorted with rage at being struck where it hurt. I weakly gripped the handrail. But every word I spoke hit hard. I said. Taking advantage of a sick adopted brother. Crawling into your future sister-in-law's bed. Debasing yourself and disregarding morals. You should be the one who feels ashamed. Makoto gritted his teeth, growling. What's there to be proud of? So what if you're the biological child of the Wong family? They're all on my side, trying to make you break up with Willow. Suddenly, he gave a cruel smile, his eyes gleaming with a sense of triumph. He said, the night before you woke up, Willow begged me for it 3 times right by your sickbed. My body drove her wild with desire. Willow's betrayal didn't spark any anger or sadness in me. I stared at him coldly, my eyes as calm as still water. I said, Makoto, you're pathetic. Not able to provoke me. Makoto finally snapped. He shouted, George, how dare you still act so high and mighty? Don't forget, you owe me your life. You shouldn't have woken up. The demonic malice fueled an impulse that had been suppressed in my heart for years, and it broke free. Makoto suddenly shoved me with all his strength. He yelled, die. The moment I heard his words, I sensed something was wrong. As my body lost its balance, I grabbed onto Makoto, and we both tumbled down the long spiral staircase. Blood poured from Makoto's forehead and my own mouth. The sight of red filled my vision, and I saw the pain twisting Makoto's face. So, he can feel pain too. Maria was the first to hear the noise and rushed downstairs. When she saw the 2 of us collapsed in the pool of blood, she instinctively ran to Makoto. Makoto, who had lived a life of luxury, was already unconscious from the pain. Maria quickly glanced at me, still conscious, and ordered the bodyguards to carry Makoto to the car. She said, George, Makoto's head was injured. His condition is critical. I have to take him to the hospital. Without another word, she turned and walked out with hurried steps. The system notified me. Host, you have multiple fractures and internal injuries. Even without changing your identity, you won't survive much longer. I barely managed a faint smile, murmuring before I lost consciousness. No wonder it hurt so much. It was the butler who eventually rushed me to the hospital for emergency treatment. Less than a day after being discharged, I was back in the operating room. When I woke up, Willow was sitting beside my bed, her eyes red, clutching my hand. She said, George, thank goodness you're awake. I thought you might never wake up. Her voice trembled with tears. She said, please don't leave me, George. The anesthesia had worn off, and every slight movement of my broken body sent waves of intense pain. I still managed to pull my hand out of hers. Just wait a little longer. It'll all be over soon. Suddenly, the door slammed open with a loud bang. My father stormed in, cursing, George, how could you push your brother down the stairs? How could I have a son with such a venomous heart? Behind him, my mother was crying, her voice thick with sorrow. George, you've really disappointed me. I looked at my parents, who were in such an emotional state, and spoke in a tone so calm it was almost chilling. I said, it was Makoto who pushed me first. My father's face darkened with rage. You're still lying. Why would Makoto push you? You're the one who's narrow-minded and has been against him since childhood. I knew this would happen. I picked up my phone from beside me. I said, then call the police. The police will restore the truth based on the evidence at the scene. My father, in a fit of rage, grabbed my phone and smashed it to pieces. He shouted, family against family. Are you trying to make the whole world laugh at the Wong family? I stared at my so-called father with unblinking eyes. I said, I just want my innocence. My father and I locked eyes, and his dark, angry expression softened, a trace of confusion flashing across his face. Willow, with a dark expression, advised, Uncle, please hear George out first. Just as my father was about to try and question me about that night, the door swung open again with a loud crash. Slamming into the wall, Maria rushed in with 2 doctors. Without saying a word, she grabbed my hand and urgently said, get his blood drawn right away. I asked, you want me to give blood to Makoto? I looked at Maria's face, which seemed strangely unfamiliar now. I said, Maria, aren't you going to ask about my condition? Maria's eyes were filled with impatience and exhaustion. She said, George, I can ignore the fact that you pushed Makoto down the stairs, but Makoto will die without your blood. You have to save him first. Willow, upon hearing that her lover's life was in danger, hesitated for a moment. The words George needs rest she was about to say caught in her throat. She looked at me, her brow furrowed with concern. She said, George, he's your brother. Chapter 7. I asked, Willow, do you want me to donate blood to Makoto too? For the first time, Willow saw such a look in my eyes. one that seemed filled with endless despair and desolation. A sense of unease stirred in her heart. Soon, she recalled the past 3 years, the twisted and secretive moments she shared with Makoto. Her dark eyes began to fill with desire. To her, I was an untouchable god, while Makoto was a lover who could fulfill all of her desires. Of course, a lover could never compare to a god, but she didn't want to lose either. This wasn't a matter of choosing one or the other, she was just taking some blood. It would be fine, she said. Anyway, your brothers. Willow instinctively avoided my gaze, saying, there are doctors here, you won't be harmed. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I'll have the butler prepare some nourishing soup to replenish your energy and blood. With that, Willow picked up her phone and walked out of the room. I should have been angry, but my body wouldn't allow me to feel that way. It was as if all the energy had been drained from me, and I lay in bed, staring blankly at her retreating figure. I remembered when I was 6, Makoto had killed my cat by accident, and when I went to my parents to report it, all I got was scolding. I refused to accept it, crying and throwing a tantrum, only to be met with a cold slap instead of my mother's warm embrace and soothing words. I ran away with my school bag, and it was Willow who found me. She took my hand and promised she would grow up quickly, provide me with a warm home, and take care of many cats. She broke her promise. After Willow left, my mother no longer hesitated. She said, don't you feel fine now? Why not donate some blood to Makoto? He's injured his head. His health has always been fragile. I think you're just stalling to let Makoto die. Maria frowned. It's just a little blood. Before I could react, she gave a sharp order to the doctor. Hurry up and draw the blood. The doctor wiped the sweat from his brow, saying, drawing blood from the patient might not be appropriate. The hospital has already arranged for blood from the city hospital. We can wait another half hour. Maria snapped. No. What if something happens to Makoto in the meantime? My mother, filled with anxiety, grew impatient and, seeing there was no way to reason with me, swiftly stepped forward. She grabbed my hand roughly and shoved the needle into my vein. The cold touch sent a tremor through my soul. Life seemed to slip away with the blood. A wave of dizziness hit me, and it felt like I was drifting back to my happiest childhood moments, smelling a familiar scent, wanting to catch a glimpse of my mother's face. But my vision blurred to the point where I couldn't see clearly. Instinctively, I whispered, Mom, Mom. It hurts so much. The sound of my voice, soft like a kitten's, made her heart stop for a beat. But quickly, she remembered the adopted son in the other room, whose life hung in the balance. She said, George, stop being willful. My mother turned her back on me, refusing to look at me. She muttered, if it weren't for you, Makoto wouldn't be in this predicament. You need to learn your lesson, the doctor hastily reminded. 200 milliliters have been drawn. My father urged. Keep going. My mother hesitated for a moment, then nodded, agreeing. Draw more, just to be safe. Maria's mind was filled with images of Makoto, bleeding and unconscious. She had no time to spare for me, constantly glancing toward the door, murmuring, Makoto, please don't have any accidents. The system suddenly announced. Warning, host's body is not able to sustain the transition to a new identity after death. The sharp beeping of the alert rang out. It was as though my senses were returning for a brief moment, and I could hear their words clearly. In my peripheral vision, I saw the woman I once viewed as my savior, hanging up the phone and walking back into the room. Slowly, I closed my eyes. I said, System, just take my points. I don't care. Take me away. The system remained silent for a long time. It wasn't meant to handle soul transfers, but in the end, it made an exception for me. The mechanical voice sounded once more. Soul will depart shortly. Chapter 8. As I fell into unconsciousness, the panicked doctor hurriedly intervened. 400 milliliters. We can't take any more. Even a healthy person couldn't handle this much at once. My father replied. This is a matter of life and death. What are you dragging your feet for? We already took 600 milliliters before, and nothing happened. Old Wang. Before my father could continue scolding, my mother stopped him. She glanced at my son lying on the bed, his face pale and eyes closed, and something stirred in her chest. She said, forget it. Just take this blood to save Makoto. Following her gaze, my father finally noticed my bloodless face. With a cold snort, he muttered, unfilial son, you've brought this upon yourself. At this moment, Maria stood up and said, we've wasted too much time. Let's go now. If there's not enough blood, we'll come back for more. The doctor, who was about to check my condition, was pulled away by Maria. Willow brushed past them. She remembered the dull, lifeless look in my eyes, and an increasing sense of panic gripped her. She was about to come forward to comfort me, but my father, who had intended to push for a union between Willow and Makoto, called out to her, Willow, come with us. Willow glanced at the bed. My head turned slowly to the side, the sunlight filtering through my yellowed hair, revealing a pale, translucent skin beneath. I looked so weak, so colorless. It seemed like I might vanish in the next moment. A tightness gripped Willow's chest, and she stepped forward. My mother, who was about to leave the room, turned around when she noticed Willow had not followed. She said, "Let George rest." Willow, thinking of her lover's uncertain fate and the 3 years she had spent with Makoto, unconditionally accompanying him without name or recognition, felt a pang of guilt. She turned on her heel, overcome with inexplicable unease. She didn't dare face me directly. She said, "George, I'll go check on your brother." In the blink of an eye, the room fell silent. I spoke. "They didn't even realize I'm dead." My soul drifted in the air, gazing forlornly at the lonely body below. The system responded, "Host, it's not their lack of love for you that hurts. What truly wounds you is the unrealistic hopes and expectations you still hold." The system guided my soul to the operating room door, where the Wong family and Willow's faces were filled with true concern and urgency. No one paid any attention to the severely injured me, who had lost hundreds of milliliters of blood. The system said, "Host, let go of your hopes." I turned my gaze away and stared directly at the door, seeing inside where Makoto, who should have been on the brink of death, was now flushed with color, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. I couldn't help but let out a bitter smile. If only the Wong family and Willow had used a little bit of their minds, they could have easily seen through Makoto's clumsy lie. But sadly, when you care, you become blind. Goodbye, Mom, Dad, Maria. Goodbye, Willow. I took one last look at my former parents, sister, and lover. In the future, I would become my own closest and dearest, loving myself 1,000 times over. Farewell. It was the system that was truly infuriated by the scene inside the operating room. It said, on the day the host woke up, Maria installed surveillance cameras on the corridors and staircases of every floor of the Wong house. The system can hack into major social platforms and expose the footage. Maria had probably installed the cameras because she feared I would harm Makoto. But in the end, it had captured Makoto's crimes. I found it all absurd. Sleepiness washed over me, and though I still had time before I could borrow someone else's body, my remaining points were insufficient to keep my soul clear. I slowly fell into dormancy. Before I fell asleep, I gazed at the system that had accompanied me through countless lives, feeling a bittersweet gratitude. I said, "Thank you, system." In the end, the system sought justice for me. I suppose I wasn't that miserable after all. Chapter 9. The moment George fell into complete slumber, Willow seemed to sense something. As though something crucial had been violently ripped from her life, she frantically looked into the emptiness. She cried out, "Don't go." Maria, with a complicated expression, tried to reassure her. "Makoto will be fine." Willow opened her mouth, but no words came out. Not long after, Willow and the Wong family's phones began ringing incessantly. They soon discovered that the Wong family's surveillance footage had leaked and was trending on social media. Confused, Willow opened the video sent by Lu's mother. Makoto's voice came through clearly. He said, "George, what's the matter? The dowry list ended up in my hands, and now you can't sleep." Willow murmured, "Dowry." Her tone shifted from calm to cold. The Wong family didn't have time to address her. They were staring at the screen in shock. In the dim footage, Makoto's eyes, gleaming with malice, were especially unsettling. Wong's mother took a step back and said, "Is this Makoto?" The video kept playing. Makoto spoke again. "The night before you woke up, Willow clung to me by the bedside and had me 3 times. My body made her lose her mind." Willow screamed. Makoto. She no longer cared to ask why her dowry had ended up in Makoto's hands, but an overwhelming sense of terror almost consumed her. Makoto. How dare he? Maria had long known about the affair between Makoto and Willow, but hearing him say it so plainly still made her heart ache. However, Willow's reaction chilled her even more. Maria said, "Sister Willow, Makoto likes you so much. If it weren't for you." At that moment, the screen showed Makoto violently shoving George. He cursed. "Die." Maria's eyes widened as she saw George, in the instant of falling, drag Makoto down the stairs with him. Her face turned pale, and she collapsed onto a bench in the hospital corridor. How could Makoto do this to her brother? She had personally installed the surveillance cameras, but she hadn't watched the footage. Assuming it was George who pushed Makoto, Maria pulled at her hair in anguish. She muttered to herself, "Why did this happen? Makoto has always been kind and gentle." Wong's father, staring at the scathing comments online, grew darker and darker. Finally, in a fit of rage, he shouted, "It must have been George who leaked the video. He's completely ruined the Wong family's reputation. Unfilial son." He turned and stormed toward the hospital room. Just as he reached the door, the doctor ran out, looking like he had seen a ghost. He bumped into them and, in a panic, shouted, "Mr. Wong, Miss Lu, it's bad. Mr. Wong has passed away." "What did you say?" Willow's eyes turned bloodshot with a terrifying fury as she grabbed the doctor by the collar, demanding, "Who died?" "He just woke up." The doctor was near tears as he said, "Mr. Wong, he's really gone." My mother, who had just caught up, heard the news and nearly collapsed. Wong's father swiftly supported his wife. Wong's mother gripped his hand tightly, her lips as white as paper. She muttered, "Gone." Wong's father's face turned an ashen shade as he snapped. He's had over 20 years of blood drawn from him. How could he just die so easily? He turned, his anger flaring as he shouted at the doctor, "How much did George pay you? How dare you help him lie to his parents? Are you trying to avoid my investigation into this family scandal? Unfilial child." The doctor, trembling after Willow threw him to the ground, hesitated, unsure what to say. This was a private hospital owned by the Wong family, and there were some things he wasn't supposed to question. He said, Mr. Wong had lost too much blood. His body couldn't withstand. His expression, too genuine to be fake, made Willow's blood run cold. She could no longer bring herself to enter the room, her rage boiling over as she raised her hand to slap the doctor. She yelled, "Don't you dare curse him, he won't die." The scene descended into chaos. Wong's father struggled to support his limp wife as he stormed into the room, throwing off the white cloth that covered my body. He yelled, "George, enough of this, get up." But his anger froze on his face, replaced by shock and fear. Wong's mother, submerged in an overwhelming wave of terror and regret, couldn't breathe. The air around her felt suffocating, and though her mouth opened, she couldn't draw in a breath. The anxiety that had plagued her for so long turned to physical pain. Her mind was filled with the faint, heartbreaking whispers of "Mom" from George. How much pain must he have been in? Finally, Wong's mother cried out in anguish, "George!" Willow, who had been outside the room, heard the heartbreaking cry. Her face, already flushed with rage, turned pale as paper. The hand she had raised in anger seemed frozen in midair. She didn't know how she ended up inside the room. By the time she entered, Wong's father was desperately trying to lift his wife, but she had no strength left in her legs. She couldn't stand. In the end, she collapsed over my cold body. Tears the size of raindrops fell from her eyes, landing on my lips. She trembled as she stroked my stiff face, unable to believe that "Mom" was the last word I had spoken. Her voice was hoarse. "Mom just wanted you to save Makoto. Why did you have to leave? George, wake up." She pressed her cheek against my forehead, trying to warm me, but the coldness sent a tremor through her body. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I'll never scold you again. Please, don't scare your mother." George. She had sworn to give her son the best of everything in life, but somewhere along the way, she had come to feel that her son didn't understand, that he wasn't as considerate as the adopted son, and she had withheld even the smallest affection. Even in the last days when George was awake, she had only given him endless scolding, and now, her son was dead. The unbearable memories became sharp shards, tearing through her body, dragging her down into a pit of guilt. She remembered how George had been when he was born, small, soft, quietly lying in her arms, filling her heart with joy and love. She had promised to protect him, but now, he had gone ahead of her. She had been the one to insert that deadly needle into his veins. Choking on her words, she whispered, "What have I done to you, George?" Willow stared blankly at the cold body on the bed. In the midst of her heart-wrenching cries, her knees crashed to the floor, her heart feeling like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. The pain so intense that she wished she could die right then and there. "George." Willow crawled toward the bed, but the distance seemed insurmountable. She reached out to touch him, but only her fingers met the ice-cold tips of his. This was not the warmth of a living person. Grief obliterated her completely. She sobbed. "You're just joking with me, right? George, how could you leave me? Without you, I'll die." "George." We were about to get married. At the door of the room, Maria had finally prepared herself to apologize to her brother, Makoto, and ask him why he had leaked the video. She even thought of having him admit at the press conference that it was all a prank, but the scene before her left her stunned, her head spinning. Her brother had died. Maria, dazed, walked to the bedside, but before she could even see her brother's face, Willow, like a frenzied beast, jumped up and grabbed her. She yelled, "It's your fault he died." Willow slapped Maria's face repeatedly, accusing her, "You drained George's blood." Maria, her teeth knocked out by the blows, glared at Willow. Her eyes were bloodshot, her pain and regret turning into overwhelming hatred. She shouted, "You killed my brother. If it weren't for your affair with Makoto, my brother wouldn't have died. You shameless troublemaker, you're the one who drove the brothers apart." "Shut up." Willow lost all reason. They struggled fiercely, both determined to harm the other. It wasn't until Makoto's attending physician arrived to break up the fight that they stopped. He looked at the bruised and battered women, and instinctively swallowed. The doctor said, "Makoto still needs more blood." Chapter 10. Blood. Willow staggered to her feet and limped towards the doctor. She had been beaten to a pulp by Maria, with crimson blood hanging from the corner of her mouth, making her look like a vengeful demon. She asked, "Does he still need blood?" The doctor trembled. "Makoto has aplastic anemia," and he bumped his head again. "Naturally, he still needs more blood transfusions." Willow asked again, "How much blood does he need to survive? Are you trying to kill George? George is already dead. Will you not even leave the dead in peace?" After watching the video, Willow finally understood with a piercing heart that Makoto was not as fragile and harmless as he had appeared in the past. And for such a cunning and ruthless man, she had betrayed George. The doctor figured out the cause and effect. Shivering in fear, he said, "I wouldn't dare let Mr. Wong give blood. Mr. Wong is already seriously injured." Willow's throat filled with a metallic taste. The doctor had advised against letting the patient donate blood, but she had insisted. She had ignored his pleas, extinguishing the last spark of light in his eyes. He had still had a chance to be saved, but she had abandoned him to visit Makoto. She had killed her beloved with her own hands. He had died alone right there. Willow clutched her aching chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Mrs. Wong screamed, "Come back. Yes, come back." Her mind was in a bit of disarray after seeing Willow spit blood, and she couldn't help but recall her son's words. She shoved her husband aside and ran out of the room. At this moment, Willow only felt hatred for Makoto. The unbearable sorrow almost made her collapse. She had to lean against the wall, following Mrs. Wong as they rushed toward the operating room. "Open the door." With the boss's orders, the operating room door opened easily. Makoto, lying on the operating table, had already heard the commotion outside and was pretending to be unconscious. Mrs. Wong saw the blood bag almost drained and rushed over, ripping at the needle, its tip tearing through Makoto's skin. Blood poured out like a venomous snake's tongue, twisting and curling. She shouted, "This is George's blood. Give it back." Her long nails dug into Makoto's wound, sending agonizing pain through his body. Makoto endured the pain without letting his expression become too grotesque. He pretended to wake up casually, looking around in confusion and asking, "Where am I?" "Makoto." Willow saw it clearly now. Makoto wasn't at death's door without the blood transfusion. He was confident that the Wong family would insist on giving George's blood, even if it didn't cost George's life. His goal was to make George disappointed in her and the Wong family. Willow shouted, "It's you. You killed George." Makoto trembled. "What? How could George?" His lips twitched as he almost broke into a smile in his excitement, quickly lowering his head to feign surprise and sorrow. Even though George pushed me down the stairs, I never blamed him. Who would have thought that George would end up hurting himself and leaving so suddenly? Now that George is gone, we should forget the past. From now on, I'll take care of your parents, sister, and Willow in George's place. George, wherever he is now, must be wishing for us to be well." Contrary to what Makoto had expected, Willow stepped forward and slapped him off the bed. She cursed, "Take his place. Do you even deserve that?" Makoto crashed to the floor, stunned, clutching his swollen cheek, and looked up at the woman who had once been his lover, the one he had spent countless nights with. Makoto said, "Can't you let go of George? He's dead." Makoto pounded his chest, crying out, "Why can't I compare to George? Even after he's dead, you still can't see me. I'm the one who truly loves you." Willow laughed cruelly and said, "Love? You're just a bedwarmer. How dare you talk about love?" Makoto gave a bitter smile and asked, "To you, I'm just a bedwarmer." Willow, "Yes, I'm shameless, but it's because I love you so much that I threw everything away, and your saintly George, as soon as he wakes up, he can't wait to push me down the stairs and get rid of me. In your heart, there's only him." Willow couldn't believe how shamelessly he was lying through his teeth. She opened the video and threw it at him. Through gritted teeth, she said, "All these years, you've been distorting the truth and slandering George, haven't you? Watch this carefully. It was you who pushed George down the stairs." Makoto's resentment and grievances were shattered by the images on the video, leaving only shock and panic. When did they install cameras at the stairs? He instinctively looked at Mrs. Wong, who had always doted on him. Mrs. Wong, crazed, clutched the empty blood bag and screamed, "It's gone. George, they're all murderers. They'll pay for this." She looked at Makoto, preparing to draw blood. She said, "Give it back. You need to give it back." Makoto dodged, his heart sinking. "I can die, but not because of him." Willow said, "Call the police." Willow no longer wanted to witness this farce. She was about to call the police and have Makoto sent to prison. Mr. Wong rushed to stop her. "No, we can't avoid responsibility for the blood transfusion. We'll all end up in prison." Willow refused. "I don't care about that." She grabbed her phone back. Mr. Wong threw caution to the wind, saying, "I promised to let George marry Miss Lee. Makoto killed George, so he should go to the Lee family and atone for his sins. You know, Even your Liu family is no match for the Li family. Family Li. Willow's blood ran cold, and she said, George is my fiancé. Did you ask for my opinion before deciding for him to marry Alicia? How dare you suggest George marry that lunatic? Chapter 11. Willow, as the head of the Liu family, was well aware of the secrets the Li family had tried to hide. She said, Alicia Li has killed or severely injured 2 of her fiancés. You want George to marry her? Mr. Wang's face turned red with anger as he argued. Even if Alicia is crazy, at least she won't cuckold George. Willow's face darkened with rage, but the truth was, she had indeed betrayed George. She couldn't deny it. Mrs. Wang spoke up. You told me Alicia is the only daughter of the Li family. If George marries her, he'll become the head of the Li family one day. Mrs. Wang, hearing their conversation, felt a chill run down her spine. Her fingers trembled as she gazed sorrowfully at her husband, tears falling uncontrollably. One by one, she said, How could you lie to me? Mr. Wang hurried to explain. I didn't lie to you. Mr. Li promised George that he wouldn't have to marry Miss Li. The Li family just wants to find a father for the heir. Someone to carry on the family name. As long as Alicia Li has a test tube baby, the entire Li family will belong to George. Mrs. Wang screamed. You want our son to be a tool. You'll ruin his life. Her son's lifeless body flashed before her eyes again, and she covered her face, weeping. She said, My child will never have a future. You can't sell your son anymore. Mr. Wang's face grew pale, his tiger-like eyes glaring at Makoto. He said, You killed George. Go to the Li family and atone for your sins. Maria, sweating nervously, interjected, Dad, you've already wronged George. Do you still want to hurt Makoto? How can Makoto marry a crazy woman? Makoto crawled in front of Mr. Wang, pitifully clutching his pants and begging, Dad, I'm your son, the one you've cared for over 20 years. I don't want to marry Miss Li. Please, I beg you. Mr. Wang mercilessly yanked his leg back, his face dark with anger. Mary, how dare you even think of marrying her? You're just a plaything for Miss Li. Makoto's face turned ashen. He couldn't imagine the torment and humiliation he would face from a mentally unstable woman. He had spent over 20 years as a pampered heir, enjoying luxury and indulgence. How could he become the tool of a lunatic's revenge? So he said, Willow, for the sake of the 3 years we spent together, please help me out. I'll be killed by Alicia. Willow's eyes remained cold, sharp as knives. Her voice was icy. If you want to take George's place so badly, then suffer for him. The Liu family could easily bribe the Li family to provoke Alicia, to push Makoto to the brink of despair. She said, Makoto, I won't make it easy for you. An indescribable fear spread through Makoto's body, and even his bones felt cold. He whispered to himself, How could this happen? It shouldn't be like this. George is dead. I'm the only heir to the Wang family now, and I will be the head of both the Liu and Wang families. How can I be with a madwoman? I don't want this. Willow didn't care for Makoto's protests. Whether or not he went to the Li family was no longer up to him. After dealing with the cause of George's death, the sorrow and regret once again latched onto Willow, haunting her soul, gnawing at her, refusing to let go. She returned to the hospital and forcefully took George's body back to the Liu family estate. When Mrs. Wang couldn't bear to be separated from her son, she broke into the room and tried to snatch him away. Willow declared George was her husband and locked herself in the room, lying in bed beside the corpse. In the end, Liu mother returned from abroad, broke down the door, and had Willow knocked unconscious. The decaying body was sent to the crematorium. When Willow woke up, she demanded the ashes. As the Wang and Liu families clashed, the rumors outside grew louder. Willow was accused of having an affair with her fiancé's adopted brother, causing her perfect wife image to crumble. It was especially rumored that George had taken care of her for 3 years, and it was likely that the exhaustion led to his coma. Willow's affair sparked public outrage, and she was flooded with hate online. Willow didn't care about her reputation. She fought for George's ashes. Eventually, both families compromised, and George's ashes were buried in a public cemetery. The two families continued to argue over whether the tombstone should say, beloved husband, or loving son. Once the body was dealt with, Willow stormed into the Wang house to retrieve George's belongings, but much of it had been destroyed. She found nothing in George's personal belongings that reminded her of the life they had shared. George had known all along that she had cheated. In the middle of the yard, she could still see the remnants of the ashes. The dirty words he had said echoed in her mind, until they became arrows, piercing her chest. Willow felt an intense pain and curled up on the ground, but the discomfort wouldn't go away. She murmured, George, Mrs. Wang said. Willow, look at this. Mrs. Wang approached her. Having been the wife of a wealthy family for half her life, her once glossy black hair had now turned almost entirely white in just a few days. Her eyes were hollow, her face etched with deep lines, showing the toll of her grief. Willow, disheveled, looked up at Mrs. Wang's hand. She felt a premonition in her heart, her pulse racing. She trembled as she took the letter. It was indeed written by George. She opened it, finding only a few short sentences. Mom, Dad, Maria, when I die, you won't owe Makoto anything anymore. Willow, we're done. What's not mine, I don't want any more. Chapter 12. The letter, though light as paper, felt like a 1,000-ton boulder, pressing heavily on Willow's chest until it threatened to crush her. Willow collapsed to the ground, crying out in excruciating pain. George. But he would never respond again. She was forced to painfully realize that from the moment she chose to betray him, she was destined to lose him. He had already cast her aside. Willow covered her face, unleashing a wild, animalistic wail. George. Mrs. Wang, wordlessly bending down, took the letter and turned to leave the room. In the setting sun, her once straight back now hunched, and her frail, thin figure appeared desolate and lonely. She said, "We've all wronged George. Willow, spend the rest of your life atoning." Willow could not help but feel her heart break with grief. They were George's closest family, his dearest loved ones. If even one of them had cared for him, he would never have died. The unshakable guilt tore Willow apart. What had she done? Willow didn't even remember how she got home. All she knew was that if she had any clarity at all, the suffering she had caused George would feel like sharp saw blades pulling at her heart, leaving her bloodied and never stopping. Willow shut herself off from the world, using alcohol to numb the pain. But from some day on, she began to be tortured by bizarre nightmares. The dreams didn't stay confined to the present day, they spanned ancient times, fantasy realms, martial arts, chaotic eras, apocalyptic futures, and even the decades of the 20th century. No matter which dream she found herself in, she was always the cannon fodder. Over and over again, she was used, betrayed, and trampled. It seemed like an inescapable fate, yet reality was even more terrifying. Willow couldn't face the pain of having killed her beloved with her own hands, and so she sank into the illusions, being repeatedly abused. Physical pain was better than the ache in her soul. After dying countless times, Willow returned to the starting point of the dream, once again becoming the expendable pawn. In the dream, she fought fiercely against fate, enduring even heavier insults and hardships than before. Willow felt like an outsider, but she could truly experience the suffering of the dream's protagonist. In the end, she changed her fate, but instead of joy, she felt only sorrow. Willow had witnessed her father's death when she was young. She and her mother had been oppressed and humiliated by her uncles and other relatives. She had endured great suffering, hiding her talents to eventually reclaim the position of head of the Liu family. Her resilience could not be denied. Yet, in those countless dreams, she still chose to follow destiny and became the stepping stone for the protagonist. What was the point of all this struggle? Why had she suffered so much? Willow watched helplessly as she was knocked down over and over. Just when she thought she would give up, she stood up again and again. Her heart slowly went from numbness to feeling. She walked all the way to the final dream, where two souls were violently pulled from their bodies by a force. She saw George. She cried out, "George, did you finally come to see me?" Willow rushed toward him, but as she got closer, his soul transformed into a sky full of stars. Only when she fell did it reassemble. She couldn't touch him, couldn't hold him. Willow gazed at his elusive figure, tears streaming down her face. She choked. "George, don't leave me." George's eyes shone brightly as he spoke with excitement. "I've completed all the tasks, changed the fate of 3,000 cannon fodder, and even changed the destiny of your early death. I can finally come back to you. Willow, we'll be happy, won't we?" A thunderous crash exploded in Willow's mind. Everything became clear. The Willow in the dream was George. George had traveled through countless worlds for her. She couldn't bear one world, yet he had endured them all. How pure and passionate his love for her had been. But she had let him down. She had lost the person who loved her more than anyone else in this world. Willow tried again and again to reach him, but it was all in vain. She screamed, "No, George, don't go. Come back, George." She saw George lower his eyes in sadness, his soul gradually turning transparent as he said, "Willow, we are destined to be apart. Goodbye, Willow." Willow's heart shattered as she watched him go from joy to sorrow and then, ultimately, leave her forever. "No, George. George." Willow screamed as she awoke from the nightmare, her heart broken to realize that she had returned to reality. "George, I need to find George." Liu's mother rushed into the room and saw the bottles scattered on the floor. Enraged, she slapped her daughter twice. Willow refused to calm down, struggling to stand and grabbing her mother's shoulders, her eyes bloodshot. "Mom, it was George who saved me. It was him who kept me alive. He has a system. He won't die. I have to find him." Liu's mother pushed Willow away, slapping a document onto her face. She said, "Take a look at who made you a vegetable for 3 years." Willow, ignoring the pain on her face, quickly knelt and grabbed the document. She had never stopped searching for the truth behind the car accident from 3 years ago. If not for that accident, she and George would have been married by now. Seeing the person pointed to by the evidence, Willow's eyes widened with fury. Of course it's him. Chapter 13. Mom, did you already have a clue 3 years ago? Willow wasn't surprised by who the mastermind behind the car accident was. What stunned her was her mother's deliberate concealment of the truth. Mrs. Liu said, "When you had the accident, you were in critical condition, and so many people were eyeing the Liu family, trying to take advantage. I had to hold up the company, and I didn't have the energy to investigate in detail. Later, when you woke up, the Liu family launched a full investigation, which led to Makoto, and at the same time, he became your lover," she continued. Makoto's original target was George. Hitting you was an accident. You were caught up because of George. He was wholeheartedly devoted to you, and in the end, he became a vegetative state taking care of you. I couldn't ask you to abandon him, but you can't wait for him forever, can you? What if he never wakes up? You don't have children. What will happen to the Liu family's business? Willow asked. So, you were thinking I should have a child with Makoto, right? Willow clenched her fists. If it weren't for Makoto's interference, George and I would have had our child long ago. George wouldn't have left me. Mrs. Liu's face turned pale. She said, "You and George are over. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, you should settle things with Makoto. As far as I know, he hasn't been sent to the Lee family." Willow, filled with anger, spat. Wang family actually dares. Anger and resentment surged within Willow's chest. Makoto killed George. The Wang family ruthlessly forced their own son to marry Alicia, yet they couldn't bear to part with Makoto, their adopted son. Willow immediately drove to the Wang family to confront them. The result was Maria was pregnant. Pregnant? Willow couldn't wrap her head around it at first but then sneered. "You scold me for being shameless, yet the Wang family's precious daughter is no better, sleeping with a man and getting pregnant. I don't care how many children Maria has. Makoto must go to the Lee family. The Wang family is doing just fine, yet you dare to hide him away. Don't even think this will just blow over." Willow, holding back her discomfort, reached for Makoto. She said, "Come with me. We're going to the Lee family." However, Maria quickly pulled Makoto to her, shielding him with her body. Willow's face darkened. "Maria, get out of the way. Makoto must go to the Lee family to atone for his sins." Willow didn't hesitate, intending to forcibly drag Makoto away. Maria, having to protect both her belly and Makoto, urgently said, "Willow, what are you doing? If you take Makoto, what happens to my child?" The air was thick with silence. Wang father, his face red with shame, clenched his teeth in anger. He said, "This ungrateful daughter has Makoto's child. The Lee family is furious, thinking we are deliberately insulting Miss Lee. The Wang family has suffered a huge loss." Willow could hardly believe it. Her gaze turned like a blade and aimed directly at Maria's belly. She snapped. "He killed your own brother. You actually slept with him. Maria, you're out of your mind." Maria snapped back. "What do you want me to do? I'm carrying Makoto's flesh and blood. I don't have a brother anymore, and now you want my child to grow up without a father." Willow spat. "You don't deserve to call George your brother." Wang father shouted. Incest between siblings. The Wang family's reputation has been destroyed by these two beasts. The more Wang father thought about it, the angrier he got, cursing under his breath. Willow's knuckles turned white as she gripped her hands too tightly. Unable to hold back anymore, she raised her hand to slap Maria. Wang father stepped forward to block, saying, "What's the use of hitting them? George is dead. The Wang family has been battered by the Lee family, and we're done for. Besides, Maria has made up her mind about Makoto. The child in her belly is the only heir of the Wang family. If something happens to Makoto, what will happen to them? This matter ends here." Willow's voice was cold. "Ends here?" Willow felt a deep chill at the Wang family's indifference. She said, "Makoto killed George, and you, as George's father, actually agreed to let Maria have the murderer's child. You're not worthy of being George's family." Neighbors outside the villa rushed over, gossiping and pointing fingers. The usually proud Wang father had his face flushed red, unable to hold his head high. He muttered, "Let's go inside and talk." Willow shook off his hand, her eyes cold and filled with venom as she glared at them. She gritted her teeth and spoke through clenched jaws. "From now on, the Wang and Liu families will never rest until one of us is destroyed." Chapter 14. The Wang family was originally slightly weaker than the Liu family, which was why they tolerated Willow's entanglements with both brothers and even allowed Makoto to marry her in the end. Later, the Lee family was humiliated twice over Miss Lee's incident, severely punishing the Wang family. Despite this, the Wang family's power was now on par with the Liu family. Willow's image of a loyal lover collapsed. She began drinking heavily and ignoring her responsibilities. Her ambitious uncles and aunts returned, and the Lu group faced internal and external troubles. At this critical moment, Willow declared war on her longtime ally, the Wang family. The interests of the two families were deeply intertwined. The Wang family was heavily wounded, and the Lu family didn't fare any better. Willow paid no attention, attacking the Wang family like a mad dog, while Maria, in order to protect her husband, showed no mercy either. At the same time, as the Wang and Lu families tore each other apart, I had successfully borrowed the corpse of Chan family's young master, David, and revived him for 3 months. In front of the canvas, a tabby cat lazily curled up by my feet. I focused on my painting, undeterred by fatigue. The system spoke. Host, David, though naive like a child, has a great talent for art. The Chan family specifically hired several internationally renowned masters to teach him how to sketch, paint in traditional Chinese style, oil paint, watercolor, and more. Master Chan's painting skills, which he has practiced for over a decade, have now become muscle memory. Why bother with all this effort? I didn't stop painting, replying earnestly. System, these skills are not truly mine. Only through continuous practice can I truly master them. Besides, I want to capture the stories from the past 3,000 small worlds, the 3,000 lives that were trampled by the protagonist and perished innocently, those who had given their all, wishing to change the past. They were pure and kind-hearted people, I said. They deserve to be seen. David. It was late at night when Mrs. Chan entered with a cup of warm milk. Her gentle and loving gaze always focused on me. She softly said, David, it's time for bed. Thank you, Mom. I took the milk and drank it slowly. When I first woke up, I had a hard time adjusting and didn't dare call Ms. Chan Mom, but her tender, motherly love made me let down my guard. I was so lucky to have been reborn in the Chan family. I had asked about the whereabouts of the original owner. The system answered. The Chan couple has lived a life of kindness, and their virtuous deeds protected David's reincarnation into another happy and wealthy family. The host need not worry. The system has arranged the heavenly Tao, and the Chan family will never notice any abnormalities. From now on, you are David himself. My mother gazed at me absent-mindedly, lovingly caressing my soft hair. She said, David, you used to be like a child, and I always worried that after your father and I pass away, your sister wouldn't be able to protect you, even if she could. Once she has her own family, how much energy would she have left to care for you? I could never feel at ease. Fortunately, heaven has shown mercy. She choked up a little, her eyes shimmering with a soft glow. Tears began to fall as she said, David, you've finally grown up. Even if I'm no longer around, I won't have to worry about you being bullied anymore. Feeling her overwhelming love, my heart ached. For the first time, I gathered the courage to hug her. I called out, Mom. She froze for a moment, then both laughed and cried, tightly returning the embrace. David, my child, I've finally waited for this day. Outside the door, my father and sister rushed in after hearing the noise. My father, eyes red, stepped forward and wrapped his arms around my mother, saying, all right, it's a good thing David is recovering. Don't cry so much. But my mother cried even harder. I just feel so sorry for David. Our David doesn't know how many people used to mock him as a fool. Just like Miss Lee from the Lee family. The Lee family is ruthless, and yet people still say Alicia is crazy. My father wiped the tears off my mother's face tenderly. He comforted her. It's all right. Our David is getting better. If anyone dares call him a fool again, I'll never forgive them. My sister walked in with a smile. She said, since my brother's better now, let's take him out for a walk. Let everyone see, my brother is not a fool. You. My mother lightly slapped my sister on the shoulder. What do you mean, take him for a walk? Your brother isn't a donkey or a horse. My sister quickly acted cute and apologized. Mom, I'm sorry. I meant to take my brother out and amaze everyone. She grabbed my mother's hand, her face full of pride. Mom, you have no idea. After the board of directors saw my brother's paintings, they were absolutely stunned. They rushed me to buy the copyrights right away. They've all decided to publish the comics and distribute them. They're sure it'll be a huge hit. If they find out the author is my brother, they'll be terrified, won't they? Hearing this, my mother wiped her tears from the corners of her eyes. She said, my David has finally had his hard times come to an end. The scene before me stirred my heart deeply. I had already given up on expecting familial love, but now I realized how wonderful it felt to be cared for. I made up my mind. I would protect the Chan family on behalf of the original owner. No one would harm my family, not even a bit, my mother said. Recently, there have been some auctions and concerts, but they're too small in scale. She began worrying about my first appearance in the social scene after my recovery, saying, Sai, we didn't even have time to get you a proper suit. My father thought of something and said, next month is the Su family's patriarch's 80th birthday. Celebrities from all over F City will attend. How about we take David there? My mother clapped her hands and smiled. Sure, that way. Everyone will know David is fully recovered. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. The head of the Su family, Anna Su, also woke up suddenly 3 months ago. She woke up not long after David. Anna. Upon hearing this familiar name, I couldn't help but be struck with realization. The first World's Awakening villain NPC, who later appeared in every world in different forms, always carried the name Anna. Was this a coincidence? Chapter 15. Willow burst into the study, where the nearly 60-year-old Lu mother was frantically trying to clean up the mess her daughter had left behind, desperately attempting to save the Lu family from collapse. Seeing her irresponsible daughter, she was enraged and snapped. I told you the truth about the car accident to give you something to do, not to make you an enemy of the Wang family. Are you trying to drag the whole Lu family down with you? Willow ignored her, urgently handing a book to her mother and urging, Mom, you have to tell me who the author of this comic is. Where is he? The Lu family owned a large-scale comic platform, which was one of their main industries. They had survived in the battle against the Wang family thanks to a strong fan base, but now, they were being attacked by the Chan family. Originally, the Chan family wasn't focused on comics. Lu mother scowled. This series of comics is the latest project from the Chan family. I bought one to have a look. The story is exquisite, and the art is superb. Even the signed authors of Lu family can't hope to imitate it. The author is a rising star in the art world. Using the pen name Cloud Trend, Willow's eyes lit up with excitement. She exclaimed, Cloud Trend, it's him. He's back. Lu mother was stunned. How do you know him? The outside world says that Cloud Trend is the young master of the Chan family. David, if Lu family could sign even one of his works, it might help resolve our current predicament, but it's a pity. How could young Master Chan possibly sign with us? Thinking of this, Lu mother shot Willow a disappointed glare, muttering, Young Master Chan was a fool for over 20 years, and now that he's regained his sanity, he's become a genius painter. You're 28 and only know how to make trouble. This thought made Lu mother seethe with anger. If only Willow hadn't cheated, Makoto would have been in prison 3 years ago, and she could have ended up with George by now. She sighed and said, In the end, you made a mess of everything. However, Willow was lost in the joy of having found her lover. She held the comic book, crying or laughing, unsure of her own emotions. Lu mother's anger flared again. She said, Both of you were in comas, but look at Anna from the Su family. She woke up less than 4 months ago and has already put Su family in order. And you've wasted 3 years doing what? Willow replied, Anna, it's her. She's really chasing after me. It was as if Willow had been hit by a shock, and she shouted in panic, We can't let that person meet George. Where is David? I need to see him. Lu mother frowned deeply, saying, George is dead. Willow declared, David is George. Willow clutched the comic book, where all the stories drawn were the very ones she had experienced in her dreams, or rather, the 3,000 tasks that George had truly completed. Only he could have drawn them. She said, I need to see him, and I want his forgiveness. Lu mother broke into a cold sweat. She said, I think you're too heartbroken and have lost your mind. How could young Master Chan and George be the same person? Willow shook her head. It's him. Her face was full of excitement and fanaticism as she tried to rush out. Lu mother was utterly exhausted. She ordered people to forcefully lock Willow up. Willow shouted, Let me out. I need to see George. Willow was like a wild animal, kicking the door with all her might. Mom, I need George. Lu mother leaned on her aching forehead, saying, When your father died, I had no time to care for you. It was George who helped you through the shadows. I know how important he was to you, but George is dead. I saw him cremated with my own eyes. Stop making a scene. Willow, Mom, George isn't dead. Let me out. Willow knelt and bowed her head on the floor of the room. She cried, George is still waiting for me, Mom. He loved me so much, he wouldn't leave me, Mom. How could Lu mother believe such absurd words? She became more and more convinced that her daughter had lost her mind. Suppressing the sorrow in her heart, she said, Willow, calm down for now. Mom is doing this for your own good. If you upset young Master Chan, Lu family won't be able to protect you. Chapter 16. My sister said, Don't be afraid, brother. I'm here. Inside the car on our way to the Su family's old residence, my sister noticed my silence and, in an attempt to lighten the mood, waved her hand playfully and said, Whoever dares to upset my brother, just watch me slap them. I chuckled and replied, I'm not afraid. I'm just thinking, the head of the Su family just happens to have also become a vegetable 3 years ago. My sister scratched her head and asked, Why, also? Who else? My heart skipped a beat. How careless of me. My sister then said, I know now. You're talking about young Master Wang, right? The Wang and Lu families have been in the news a lot these past few months. My mom, who had heard some rumors, remarked, I heard that on the night he was discharged from the hospital, He was pushed from the top of a building by his adopted brother, and his family and fiancé forced him to donate blood, leading to his untimely death. When the news broke, the Wang family went to great lengths to protect their adopted son. My mom shook her head and said, "The Wang family always says that the father of the adopted son saved their son's life. Does that mean young Master Wang had to give up his life for that?" Speaking of which, the adopted son is so ruthless. It's hard to imagine that his father would risk his life to save a child from his employer's family. I suspect there's something suspicious about that car accident from over 20 years ago. I lost focus. Back then, being a part of the situation, I was too consumed with sorrow and injustice. But now that I think about it, the Wang family's favoritism towards Makoto was because the driver had saved my life. But did he really save me? My sister interrupted my thoughts. "Okay, let's stop talking about such heavy stuff." She changed the subject and said, "Speaking of the head of the Su family, she's a legendary figure, one who made a dramatic comeback. Her parents had a business marriage and didn't get along. After Su's mother got pregnant, her father shamelessly moved in with his first love. Su's mother, depressed after childbirth, committed suicide. But Su's father wouldn't allow the mistress to enter their home. The mistress and her son held a grudge for years." My sister rambled on about the Su family's gossip, saying, "Anna's accident, that was all planned by the illegitimate son." When Anna woke up, she took swift action, reclaimed her position as head of the Su family, sent her good-for-nothing brother to prison with a life sentence. Her scumbag father even had a stroke from the shock. Ha! My sister was laughing with delight, as though she had just watched a real-life story of revenge and family drama unfold. My mom nodded. Thanks to old Su, the Su family's vast fortune didn't fall into the hands of that illegitimate son. The head of the Su family really values her father's birthday. My dad chimed in. Old Su is actually a stern and conservative man. That child has had a hard time. I quietly listened as Anna's life story was summarized in a few sentences. Behind those words was a heavy past. I wondered if Anna was the first villain to awaken in this world. If she was, I finally understood why she had such an obsessive personality. Because I had unknowingly saved her on that snowy night. She had abandoned her plan to destroy the world and entangled herself with me for 3,000 lifetimes. She had never experienced love, which was why she craved it so much, clinging to a bit of warmth, refusing to let go no matter what. As I pondered this, the car stopped in front of the Su family's old residence. The Su family was quite the bustling household. Anna had firmly secured her position as the head of the family with ruthless methods, leading the group to new heights. Whether they had received an invitation or not, guests were eager to crowd in and celebrate her father's birthday. In the past few months, the Chan family had also been the center of attention. Guests were fascinated by the story of Chan family's young master, David, who had been brain dead for years, suddenly regaining his consciousness and rising to become a genius artist. Before the car even stopped, all eyes were already on me. People whispered, "Is this really Chan family's young master, David? Just look at his movements, that inherent nobility. It's clear he's been raised by an aristocratic family. Having just regained his senses, he probably hasn't had time to learn all these social etiquettes, right? Maybe he wasn't really stupid all along. He probably didn't want to attend banquets because he was busy thinking up storylines. Otherwise, how could he produce such brilliant artwork all of a sudden? Young Master Chan isn't stupid. He's a genius. No one else could create such art." Exactly. He's an artist. That's the problem with gossip. Young Master Chan just wanted to quietly focus on his work at home. But some people behind his back called him a little fool from the Chan family. Rumors are terrifying. In an instant, my image in the guests' minds flipped. The socialites eagerly chatted with my mom, subtly introducing their single daughters. Quite a few aristocratic young ladies even approached me. I responded politely, handling the conversations with ease. Just when I was talking to a composed and graceful young lady, a particularly intense gaze suddenly pierced through me. I turned to meet a pair of bloodshot eyes. It was her. Chapter 17. I asked. System, is Anna her? Anna and the versions of her in the 3,000 worlds were all different in appearance, but their eyes were the same. They all carried an almost maddened, passionate affection. But how could she have come to the real world? The system admitted, there is no such thing as reality. This world, just like those small worlds, is also a novel brought to life. You and Anna are nothing more than background characters, cannon fodder. So, I'm just cannon fodder. A feeling of unwillingness surged in me. How could the author, with just a few strokes, easily write our tragic and brief lives? We are not mere paper figures. We have flesh, blood, and emotions that can hurt, and we can cry, the system replied. Where there are protagonists, there are always supporting characters. But some protagonists have skewed values and harm innocent supporting characters, causing the small worlds to overflow with resentment and near collapse. That's why the main god bound a task force to go and fix the storyline. The system, with a hint of fear in its tone, continued. I only just found out that Anna's soul has scattered across 3,000 worlds. Originally, she planned to destroy every one of those small worlds and then take down the main god. But then she met you. Every time she fell in love with you, she would awaken fragments of memories from the past, and in the end, she pieced them together, returning here. To be more precise, the villain didn't chase after you through 3,000 lifetimes. She fell hopelessly in love with you in every lifetime. A tremor ran through my soul. In those thousands of worlds, I had steadfastly and desperately sought the only goal, reuniting with Willow. In unseen corners, there was someone who loved me with equal depth. The system, worried that Anna might fall into darkness again due to unrequited love, said, because of you, the villain has given up on destroying the world 1,000 times, trying once more to love this world. She's not like Willow. She cares about you. Tears welled up in my eyes. We both loved someone who didn't deserve to be loved. We were both the greatest fools in love. The system read my thoughts and said, how could you not deserve to be loved? You are brave in love and hate, persistent and unyielding, exactly the kind of person suited for the redemption of this crazy, broken soul. Hurry up and throw Willow, that trash, out of your heart, and let Anna take her place. My momentary sadness was shattered by the system's words. I didn't know how to face Anna at this moment. What I saw in her was more of a reflection of my past self, which stirred feelings of guilt and pity. But this wasn't love. After loving one person with all my heart, how could I so easily fall in love with another woman? The system, anxious and spinning in circles, watched as Anna walked up to me. To my surprise, she didn't recognize me on the spot but instead invited me to dance the first waltz of the night. I placed my arm around her slender, soft waist, and with my other hand, I held her delicate, white fingers. We danced in the center of the ballroom, moving with the music, looking into those familiar eyes, feeling the burning, passionate love beneath her calm expression. I recalled how she had silently protected me in every lifetime. I felt a sense of peace. I, who had been discarded by the Wong family and Willow, could still be treasured as someone's priceless gem. People whispered. I have to say, Miss Su and young Master Chan make quite a pair. They both recovered around the same time. Maybe it's fate, a perfect match. They truly are a beautiful couple. The guests' hushed gossip reached the ears of the Chan family. My mom tugged at my dad's sleeve and said, Old Chan. My dad stroked his beard thoughtfully and said, maybe, with David's recent artwork becoming so popular, Miss Su wants to discuss some business cooperation with the Chan family, and that's why she's taking the initiative to get close to David. My mom replied, what if? My dad gently patted her hand and reassured her. Miss Su is a remarkable young woman. She's a good child. My sister clasped her hands under her chin, eyes sparkling, and said, am I going to have a sister-in-law soon? And from F City's top aristocratic family, no less. My mom quickly stopped her. Don't be silly. Miss Su might not have such intentions. My sister, linking arms with my mother, said, oh, come on, Mom. I'm just happy for my brother. If my brother caught Miss Su's eye, that's a good thing, right? No matter what, I won't end up like Maria, who ruined her own brother's life and then had a kid with the murderer. Who would be that kind of sister? My dad sighed and said, the Wong family used to be a top-tier aristocratic family, and now, just a few months later, they've fallen so low that they're too embarrassed to even attend old Sue's birthday celebration. As the three of them spoke, the music in the dance hall stopped. Anna didn't immediately remove her hand from my shoulder. Her palm, pressing lightly through my thin shirt, sent a warm, ambiguous heat through to my skin. Her obsidian-like eyes fixed on me. She asked, in this lifetime, should I call you David? She truly remembered the story of the 3,000 lifetimes and recognized me at first glance. I was deeply moved. She had narrow, deep-set eyes that carried a coldness when facing others, but whenever she looked at me, they were always filled with an intense, unbreakable love. I had rejected her 1,000 times. Maybe this time the ending would be different. Under Anna's hopeful gaze, I slowly raised my hand, my cool fingertips lightly brushing the tear mole at the corner of her eye. I said, long time no see, Anna. Anna's eyes turned red with emotion, her body trembling. In the first lifetime, I was the crown prince, and she was a beggar in the snow. I saved her and named her Anna. After 3,000 lifetimes, she finally heard that name again, Anna. Anna remembered that in one of those lifetimes, she became the first female general of the empire, fought to the death against the enemy, and protected George's kingdom with her life. She fought through her wounds, dying in his arms. George's embrace had been so warm. In every lifetime after that, she had guarded him with her life. This was her crown prince, her light, her salvation. After regaining all her memories and returning to the present, she had thought she would never see him again. But now, he was still here. Anna had so much to say to the crown prince she had longed for day and night. But before she could organize her thoughts, a hysterical shout echoed from the corner of the banquet hall. Then, a figure rushed towards them. George. Chapter 18. When it was heard that Chan family's eldest son, David, would attend Sue family's birthday banquet, Willow, after great effort, finally escaped from the Liu family's old house and arrived here. One of her shoes had even fallen off in the process. She had finally seen her lover, but the sight before her now deeply pierced Willow's eyes. I was standing in front of another woman, gazing at her with a deep affection as if there was no one else around. That woman was someone Willow could recognize even if she turned to ashes. In those small worlds, Anna had relentlessly pursued me 3,000 times. Willow could no longer restrain herself, and rushed forward. Before she could get close to us and take her lover back, she was quickly pinned to the ground by the bodyguards. Willow looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. She said, "George, I finally understand how you feel, thinking that we would finally be reunited, only to see the one I love with someone else. This feeling is unbearable." Anna's expression darkened like ink. It was this woman. Willow seemed oblivious to the cold, murderous aura in the air, crying and pleading, "George, don't reject me. Please come back to me." Anna coldly replied, "Miss Liu, please show some self-respect." Willow said, "I was wrong. George, I hurt you." She suddenly slapped herself twice across the face, vowing, "I was selfish in the past. If I ever hurt you again, let me die an unforgivable death. I have severed all ties with Makoto. I've used the full power of the Liu family to eliminate him. I love you, George." My gaze remained indifferent, as if she were a stranger who had nothing to do with me. I said, "Miss Liu has mistaken the person." Willow struggled fiercely. "At first, it was Makoto who climbed into my bed when I was drunk. I didn't do it on purpose." Anna asked. "The first time was an accident." And then, Anna looked down at her, sneering coldly. "The difference between humans and beasts is that humans control their actions with willpower, not letting desires and instincts take control. If you can't even bear a bit of loneliness, how can you talk about love?" Willow screamed. "I just made a mistake. I can change. George loves me. He would cross 3,000 worlds for me. How could he give up on me?" Anna's body instantly radiated an overwhelming coldness. It wasn't jealousy, but pity. George had mistakenly given his heart to this wretched thing. My mom could no longer sit idly by. With a cold glare, she said, "Enough nonsense. Willow, I see that the rumors about you are true. You've really lost your mind. George Wang has already been driven to death by you. What does my son, David, have to do with you? If you dare to keep clinging, Liu family won't even have a foothold in F City." Willow, in unbearable pain, screamed in my direction. "No, George, say something. George." Willow. The sound of frantic footsteps grew closer, and Liu's mother nearly fainted upon seeing this scene. She grabbed Willow, raising her hand to slap her twice. My mom, her face icy as frost, said, "Mrs. Liu, it's one thing if your daughter startled my son, David, but disturbing Sue family's 80th birthday, can Liu family afford the consequences?" Mrs. Liu's face drained of color. To offend both the Chan and Sue families was an added blow to the already fragile state of the Liu family. Liu family might not survive this. Mrs. Liu cursed. "You wretched thing." With that, she grabbed Willow and forced her to kneel, but Willow only cried, pleading, "George, don't leave me. I really know I was wrong." Mrs. Liu's vision blurred. Her already hunched back seemed to bend even further, and with her head full of white hair, she struggled to remain upright, trembling as she apologized repeatedly to both families. Because of Sue matriarch's marital tragedy, Anna had always been wary of romantic relationships. But now, with the old master seeing his granddaughter, who might otherwise face a lonely life, showing some affection for the young man from Chan family, a talented, handsome, well-bred young man, who had no flaws in character, he was absolutely pleased. How could he allow the insignificant Liu family to bully his potential grandson-in-law? The old master sternly warned the Liu family. Mrs. Liu, awkwardly standing, apologized repeatedly. She said, "Rest assured, Mr. Su, Willow will never appear in Chan family's sight again." As she sat in the car, Mrs. Liu seemed to age 10 years in an instant. Just months ago, she was the noble and graceful Mrs. Liu. Now, she looked like an old woman. Willow said, "Mom, you know it's George, don't you?" Mrs. Liu turned her head mechanically, gazing at her maddened daughter with a sorrowful, hopeless expression. Her voice had aged several degrees. She said, "In the past, if you had placed your feelings for George on young Master Chan, I would have been happy for you. When Liu family was still thriving, and young Master Chan was still an innocent boy, you two would have been a good match." Willow collapsed, crying out, "Mom, why don't you believe me? He's George, he's my husband. We were supposed to marry 6 years ago, and even 4 months ago." Willow's heart was torn as she said, "We were so close to marrying." Mrs. Liu, filled with pain and anger, said, "Then why did you cheat?" Unable to hold on, unwilling to let go. How did you ruin your life like this? Willow held her head in her hands, wailing in agony. George. I was wrong. I really was wrong. Mrs. Liu, both heartbroken and angry, finally spoke with grave sincerity. Young Master Chan is not someone you can fantasize about. Liu family is no longer what it once was. Right now, forget Su family, Chan family alone could crush us. If you keep going like this, you'll only ruin Liu family. This is your father's lifelong work. Before Mrs. Liu could finish, Willow lost consciousness. Mrs. Liu ordered the driver to turn the car around and head straight to the hospital, intending to have her daughter checked to see if she was truly suffering from a mental breakdown. But little did she know, the doctor would bring them horrifying news. He said, Miss Liu's health indicators are rapidly declining. She could fall into a permanent sleep any day now. Chapter 19. After the birthday banquet, Anna first arranged to meet my sister. With a few well-placed gestures, the two quickly became close friends, sharing the same bed as confidants. At the same time, Su family and Chan family collaborated on several projects, each of which proved to be extremely profitable. My father had always admired Anna, and now he couldn't wait to pack me up and send me her way. As for my mother, her best friend was Anna's aunt, and Anna had made sure to have her speak highly of her in front of my future mother-in-law. My mother, wanting to build good relations with the main branch of the family, had done everything she could to facilitate the marriage. After hearing so much, my mom started to view Anna as the perfect candidate for a daughter-in-law. Later, Anna used her love for cats as an excuse to enter our home. I was holding a tabby cat in my arms, gently squeezing its little paws, and laughing. The eldest daughter of the Su family, with all the wealth and influence, surely could get any cat she wants. Why must you come here every day to see this one? Anna didn't hide the intense affection in her eyes. She said, because it's unique. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Those eyes were as deep and mysterious as the night sky, and I couldn't help but blush. Anna's heart filled with warmth. Her prince was truly wonderful. Suddenly, Anna noticed some cat fur stuck in my hair. Without thinking, she raised her hand, and when her fingertips touched my hair, a stronger current of electricity surged through her body. It wasn't until she regained her composure that she realized her actions had been rather bold. She was about to apologize when she noticed something and couldn't help but smile. Just now, I hadn't resisted. This was a good sign, one that meant she was slowly, but surely, worming her way into my heart. After 3,000 lifetimes, Anna was patient. She believed that one day, she would have it all, my heart and soul. Anna lingered until 8 p.m. before leaving. As soon as she stepped out, she came back in with documents for David. My sister teased, you two can't bear to part, Anna. Just pick a date and let's get the wedding set. I'm waiting for the chance to toast to the happy couple. My mom helplessly tapped my sister on the forehead and said, such a child. I haven't even prepared the dowry yet. When the Chan family caught wind of this, Anna blushed, almost running out in embarrassment. But she was here to deliver documents to David. She said, David, this is the information you asked me to look into. Willow had just caused a scene at the banquet, claiming that I was George. It wasn't convenient for me to use Chan family's influence to investigate the old affairs of the Wang family. I had asked Anna to help me with the matter. Anna had guessed that George was indeed me, and thinking of all I had gone through, she was both angry and heartbroken. She said, that car accident was deliberately caused by Makoto's father. Anna carefully observed my expression for any change. She said, a few days before the accident, he was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. Worried about his young son, he decided to stage the accident, using his life to make the Wang family owe him a huge favor. But he never expected. She didn't expect the Wang family to be so utterly misguided. Anna had no good feelings toward her former in-laws, only deep resentment. How dare they? I trembled as I held the document in my hands, finally uncovering the truth. A mix of anger, frustration, and countless other emotions surged within me. Anna asked, David, are you all right? I stared at her in a daze, then tightly embraced her. Tears soaked her clothes. In a muffled voice, filled with heartbreaking grievance and release, I said, Anna, I don't owe him anything. The next day, the driver brought the evidence of the car accident being deliberately falsified by the person responsible. It was placed on the desk of Father Wang and Maria. Included were the documents proving how Makoto had ostracized, slandered, and bullied me during my school years. All of it was presented. Chapter 20. After Wang family reviewed the damning evidence, even Wang father, who had always been cold-hearted, couldn't suppress the anger rising in his chest. He gritted his teeth and said, Makoto, I thought you turned against George and plotted his death because of Willow, but I didn't realize you had been bullying George since elementary school. He slammed his fist on the table, saliva flying from his mouth as he shouted, because of you, the career I spent half my life building has come to nothing, and the Wang family has been ridiculed. The Wang family has been harboring a venomous snake like you all these years. Makoto remained unfazed, saying, Maria's carrying my child. So what if I've bullied George? Am I supposed to kill myself to atone for it? Don't forget, it was you who provoked the Lee family. The Wang family has reached this point because of your incompetence, unable to compete with others. Don't blame me for that. Besides, Makoto once again played his trump card, saying, my father died because of George. The Wang family owes me a debt that cannot be repaid in several lifetimes. Wang father's face turned darker and darker, and finally, he threw his chair to the ground, cursing. How dare you bring that up? For 20 years, I've been played by you and your father. Makoto was shocked by his reaction, his heart sinking. What did that mean? With a loud slap, Wang father threw the evidence in front of him. Look for yourself. Makoto, curious, picked up the documents, but as he read the contents, he staggered backward in shock. It was as if he had just touched something horrifying, and he tossed the file away in panic. He murmured, how could this be? Why is it like this? Makoto clutched his head, which felt like it was about to explode from the pain. He said, George didn't kill my father. It was my father who intentionally set him up for the accident. That's impossible. Yet, the truth was right there in front of him. The innocent, majestic image of his father completely shattered. The hatred that had sustained him all these years vanished, replaced by a deep sense of confusion and helplessness. For over 20 years, he had lived in constant longing for his father and hatred for George, and now, he was being told the bitter truth, that he had hated the wrong person all this time. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts. Not good, Miss Maria has had an accident. The butler rushed in a panic to inform them. By the time Makoto arrived, stumbling and falling, Maria was clutching the same evidence, her once bright eyes now fixed on him, staring coldly. Makoto watched in horror as blood spread beneath her. It was just like when Willow had the car accident and when George had fallen from the building. Makoto realized that he had done too many wrong things in his life. Was this his retribution? No matter how much Wang father hated Makoto, he couldn't just watch his daughter die from a miscarriage. He quickly shouted, get a car ready. Makoto, with vacant eyes, followed him numbly, and in his dazed state, he saw George's cold face before him. He had once hated that face with all his being. He had stubbornly believed that if it weren't for George, his father wouldn't have died. But George was the one who had been caught in the crossfire. His hatred toward George had no reason to exist in his life, which wasn't too long nor too short. After the first 5 years, the remaining 20 or so years were filled with nothing but hatred. How had his life turned out like this? Makoto gazed at the ghostly face and said, George, have you come to take your revenge on me? How laughable we are. Ha ha ha. We're all so ridiculous. In the end, the child couldn't be saved. Makoto sat silently beside the hospital bed, saying nothing. Maria, weakly lying in bed, raised her hand after a long while, placing it on her flat stomach, which had yet to return to its former state. Losing a child at such a late stage had nearly cost her life. Her thoughts wandered back to the naive brother who used to protect her. She said, when my brother was just 5 years old, from that day on, he carried the burden of a life, enduring all kinds of suffering. Maria's voice was faint. She said, my brother never meant to harm anyone. I've always misunderstood him. Willow was right. I don't deserve to be his sister. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She said, I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry for the child too. Makoto stared blankly into space, numbly listening to Maria's weeping. The child was gone, and Wang father would no longer protect him. Makoto said, Maria, I drugged you. I deliberately slept with you and got you pregnant, just to secure a talisman for myself. You were so foolish, enduring all the insults and never speaking the truth. Now the child is gone. There's no reason for our relationship to continue. Maria looked up at him, tears flowing freely, her voice filled with sorrow. I know you don't love me, Makoto, but I've loved you since I was 18. I pitied your sensitivity and fragility. But why? Why were you so cruel to brother? The smile on Makoto's lips froze. He couldn't help but wonder, if he hadn't been so obsessed with taking revenge on George, if he hadn't gotten entangled with Willow, that cold, heartless woman, would things have turned out differently? But there was no future between him and Maria. There was the blood feud of a murdered brother between them. Maria wept, her tears soaking her clothes. She said, brother's dead, mom's severely depressed, the Wang family is on the brink of bankruptcy, and now the child is gone. The family is ruined, and I couldn't protect anyone. Makoto bitterly smiled and said, Dad always called George a disaster, but in reality, I am. I brought all this calamity to the Wang family. After a long silence, he finally spoke. I'm sorry. Chapter 21. In the hospital room. Willow, frail and exhausted, was surprisingly somewhat conscious. She leaned quietly against her pillow, watching a live broadcast. Since the onset of her illness a year ago, her time spent sleeping had only grown longer. Willow knew that one day she would sleep forever. This was her retribution. She had to accept it. Fortunately, this time, she woke up just in time for David and Anna's century wedding. David and George actually didn't resemble each other at all, but Willow could still see in his starry eyes the vivid and lively figure of George from the past. On the television, he gazed affectionately at another woman. Willow remembered. Many years ago, there was a man who looked at her with those same clear and bright eyes, his heart and gaze completely filled with her. When had she lost him? Willow stared at the image of the man dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. She had once been a pathetic, bullied creature, but he had come like a beam of light, forcefully entering her dark, decaying life, leading her into the light. The divine had fallen into the mortal world for her, yet all she had wanted was to drag him down into the mud with her. She had stained him with lies and betrayal. Willow slowly shifted her gaze to the woman in the immaculate wedding dress. There was something familiar about Anna, something she could relate to. They were both obsessed, both mad. The difference was, Anna wouldn't hurt him. She would firmly stand by his side, in a higher place, shining brightly. Willow had long since understood, losing him was what she deserved. She had it coming. The door to the hospital room opened, and Lou Mother hobbled in with a cane, holding a thermal box. She said, "Willow, you're awake. Mom made you the wontons you loved when you were little." Listening to the cheerful voices from the TV, Lou Mother didn't feel the need to keep emphasizing that the man on screen wasn't George. She sat by the bed and opened the food container. As she aged, she had come to terms with many things. She spoke softly, like an ordinary mother. "Makoto has voluntarily confessed. The verdict just came through. He got a life sentence, and he accepted it calmly. I'm getting old. I can't bear it anymore. I don't trust anyone. I've decided to donate Lou family's business. Your uncles have fought for half their lives, and in the end, they didn't get a single penny. You should have seen their faces. It's really laughable." Her eyes reddened as she spoke. "Your father was a man of great loyalty and affection. If he were still here, he would have chosen one of your cousins to inherit the family business. But your uncles killed the person who cared most for them." Willow ate the wontons her mother fed her, tears falling. On the TV, the wedding was complete. George had become someone else's husband. What was the difference between her and those uncles? She too had killed the person who loved her the most. Lou Mother said, "Mom is sorry. All these years, I've been busy managing Lou family and forgot what your father originally wanted for Lou family. He wanted you to be happy, carefree. It's my fault for not taking care of you." She regretted deeply. If she had spent more time with her daughter, would she have avoided the deep childhood trauma? Would her daughter's obsessive, distorted personality have developed? If she had taught her daughter to lead a pure life, George wouldn't have died, and Willow wouldn't have fallen ill. Lou Mother, holding the bowl, was filled with tears. She choked and said, "Willow, I've ruined you." Willow replied, "No, it's the daughter's fault." Willow's vision blurred, but the pain in her heart remained sharp, preventing her from resting peacefully. She said, "I'm sorry, George. I'm sorry to you too. In this life, I've failed everyone." Willow didn't know how long she had slept, but it seemed she had woken up several times, hearing about David becoming a father, winning awards. The last time she woke up, her mother was already too old to walk, and couldn't even make it in time for the nurse to bring her to see her. The nurses were chatting about David. They said, "Did you see the news? Miss Anna officially passed the family head position to the young master of Sue family, who just graduated from university, and is now traveling the world with Mr. David. They're supposedly traveling and sketching." Another nurse replied, "Oh, Miss Sue has been accompanying Mr. Chan on his travels for years. I heard Sue family's young boy was sent into the group for training at the age of 13. That's the parents are true love, but the child is an accident." "Ha ha ha," one nurse said. Speaking of which, Mr. Chan is a master in the art world, winning countless awards both domestically and internationally. His paintings are priceless. One of the nurses pointed to Willow and whispered, "Do you know, she caused quite a scene at Sue family's grandfather's birthday, shouting that Mr. Chan was her late fiancé." Another nurse said, "I know. Her fiancé was that prematurely deceased young Master Wang, who was burdened with an inexplicable life debt, targeted by his adopted brother, betrayed by his family and lover. It was truly tragic. Now Mr. Wang has passed away. Mrs. Wang has become a nun, and young Master Wang's sister is left all alone. The once prominent Wang family has completely fallen. Willow has been asleep for half a lifetime. Do you think this is her retribution?" One nurse replied, "For sure. It's really pitiful for young Master Wang." Sigh. If Mr. Chan really is the reincarnation of young Master Wang, that wouldn't be so bad, though that's impossible. By the way, Mr. Chan's life is so perfect, isn't it? Willow let herself fall back into the endless darkness. She and George had never been wrong about each other. Anna had truly kept her promise from their wedding, that she would love and protect him, unwavering. He was living a happy life. She could finally rest.